Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. This is video 2, Microsoft's response to the filing. If you have just jumped into this one, I recommend watching the first one, as that has the pretense to this video with the whole CMA and the FTC filing and the ongoing shenanigans that the CMA has done. But this here is the continuation of that video, so I do hope you enjoy it. That's going to be me. Please consider leaving a like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow and get noticed, and helps the YouTube algorithm recommend a video to more people. Right, we are trying to get to 3,000 subs. On with the video. Well, Florian Mueller now has the Microsoft Corp and Activision Blizzard defendants appeals, the response that they have given to the Ninth Circuit. Here's the document followed by my rapid commentary. And there's about 39 tweets, but they're really short, so I just wanted to go through them because I think they're actually quite important, and I'll give my views on them as well as we are going through. Defendant appeals Microsoft Corporation and Activision Blizzard provide the following additional facts omitted from Plaintiff Federal Trade Commission's Rule 27.3 certificate. I told you the FTC's motion was disingenuous. So basically what he's saying here is that, what Microsoft is saying here, the FTC basically gave the information, but they left key points out to make their case look good. They basically falsified information to the judge to help them win. That's a scummy move to do. Facts, they add the 7/18 termination date and $3 billion backup fee, which they didn't mention. They kept that quiet because, this is one of the reasons why this whole thing is being fast-tracked. But the FTC decided to keep that quiet deliberately to try and delay the process as much as possible. The FTC's claimed emergency is entirely of its own creation. Normally, FTC seeks a preliminary injunction in federal court early. Here, they just brought a complaint with their own in-house court. Number 3. It's hard to comprehend the FTC's arguments for why the motion could not be filed earlier. I discussed that part in my recorded tweet earlier. They point out that the FTC brought this emergency motion with the appeals court only 28.5 hours prior to the expiration of the TRO, but roughly 3 days after the district court's ruling. So clearly it was basically done in a way to cause as much impact for a delay as humanly possible. They did this deliberately at this time to basically force the judge's hand to delay the process past the 17th to block Microsoft's ability to basically close. The court should not mistake the FTC's litigation gamesmanship for an emergency meriting this court's deviation from the ordinary appellate process. That's just the introductory part before they then discuss the meritlessness of the FTC's motion. Xbox described as the lowest selling video game console, which is a fact. It's not something that's hidden. The FTC's case collapsed at trial. This is again true. The FTC had literally no grounds to stand on in trial. At least Whitgarden, he learned to say the word right quite a bit, so at least he educated himself in one word in English. That was also my impression in the courtroom. Blocking the merger is unnecessary because Microsoft could readily divest Activision if the FTC's administration process ultimately produces a judicially affirmed order requiring the outcome. So there's literally no reason to block it. If they want to divest Activision, that is always a problem. That's a key thing here. They should let the parties close the deal now. The government suggests that this burden of proof should be close to the floor is bellied by decades of precedent and a long and growing list of unsuccessful vertical merger challenges, basically citing that it's been 50 years since a vertical merger has passed, and for good measure, because, every time that the FTC or another regulatory body tries to prevent something like this, there's never any good real reason to do it, and they can never come back other than wasting taxpayers' money and wasting the court's time. Also said in my Twitter space, FTC argues for an ultra-low hurdle. The opposition brief notes that the FTC's emergency motion is very much focused on multi-game library subscription services, even though it's presented virtually no evidence about that market at trial. It's true, they didn't do anything about that at trial. All they did at trial was, this is gonna break
how is this going to affect my Sony PlayStation? It's gonna eat into my shares at Sony. What am I going to do? What am I going to say to Jim Ryan when this goes horribly wrong? I promised that we would protect him.
This is, of course, the reason for that tactical decision by the FTC. Judge Corley unnecessarily, in my view, incorrectly, her only mistake of that kind, wrote in her decision that Call of Duty would likely be exclusive to Game Pass, despite Microsoft having made an offer to Sony that also involved a COD option for PS Plus. I actually agree with Judge Corley, saying that this would potentially be exclusive to Game Pass, because Game Pass puts it day and date, whereas PlayStation will not. Even if Activision offered the game to Sony to put it day one on PS Plus, they would say no. They've refused it already because they need the money from those sales. Therefore, even if they had the option to put it day one onto PS Plus Premium, they would not do it. They've actively said that this is something they are not prepared to do for their players because they want the money from their players instead, which, I can understand. Their players love to pay that sort of money. And, as they say, publishers need money, so they can get richer. It's got nothing to do with developers because they get paid anyway. You may remember from the closing argument on June 29 that it's basically had two parts, console and cloud. Subscription services were not even discussed in their own right. That is actually correct. It was harm to the consoles and harm to cloud. Subscriptions never came into right. So now the FTC is actually moving the goalposts. They've realized that the cloud market is not a sustainable argument. They've realized that the console market is not a sustainable argument, and now they're moving into subscription services. That in its own right will actually have this should have this denied, because you can only appeal based on the merits on the actual trial. By adding new factors, new elements, new variables into the mix, you're essentially changing what the whole court case would have been and potentially what the decision could have been. As such, this should no longer be valid and should instantly be striked out. The FTC didn't present evidence about them, such as economic expert testimony. The FTC may want the law to be different than it is, but this case is not the place to start. That is true. And this goes back to the point what I was saying earlier, where they were making up the law so they can actually get their own way. This reminds me of Everborn Saga's contribution to my Twitter space last yesterday, the one who commented on the FTC's motion with the district court. Contrary to his suggestions, the FTC's evidence at trial heavily focused on an implausible concern that Microsoft could foreclose market-leading Sony by refusing to make Activision games, and specifically Call of Duty, available on PlayStation console, which we actually know is not the case. Jim Ryan's quote, but PlayStation's own CEO admitted that the merger is not an Xbox exclusivity play at all. This is what Jim Ryan said to his boss Kencho Hiro, and predicted that Sony will continue to see Call of Duty on PlayStation for many years to come, which Phil Spencer and Satya Nadella both communicated to Jim Ryan and the president of Sony. For the standard for an injunction by the appeals court on an emergency basis, Microsoft and ABK point to DC Circuit as well as Ninth Circuit decisions. Here we're on the Ninth Circuit, which said only 2 years ago, the movement must show, 1, it is likely to succeed on the merits, which it is not. It is likely to suffer irreparable harm in the absence of a preliminary relief, which is not. The balance of equities tips its favor, which it doesn't. And 4, an injunction is in the public interest, which it is not. So, based on all those 4, the FTC has nothing. In 2015, the Ninth Circuit mentioned the limited and differential review according to orders denying motions for a preliminary injunction, and this year the differential clearly erroneous standard applicable to findings of fact. Judge Corley repeatedly made clear that it was not stepping into the shoes of the FTC. It assumed the FTC was correct on numerous disputed issues and even accepted positions she found dubious, which she did. As for the standard, I mean, the only one that she objected was when the FTC requested Microsoft to give Call of Duty for free to their Sony beloved company, because obviously they've got shares in there, so they want to maximize those sales and maximize those profits. But the FTC wanted Call of Duty to go to Sony for free. Let that sink in for a bit. How scumbag can you get? Microsoft explains, now in my words, that to the extent Judge Corley referred to non-PI cases, she just did so to explain what the FTC would have to prove in the end, as opposed to demanding that kind of proof right here and now. Regardless, any quibbles about the precise phrasing of the legal standard are irrelevant, because the district court repeatedly found that the FTC had no evidence to support its claims of harm, and that was proven in court, meaning that they would have failed under any plausible standard. The previous quote says two things I also stressed yesterday and or this morning. It's not all that important to fight over the interpretation of how Judge Corley described the standard. What matters is what she actually did. And that was, she was actually fair in what she did. In number 2, FTC would fail with lower hurdle 2. It is telling that the FTC's incomplete and revisionist narrative does not contain a single citation on the district court's factual findings. This is referring to Game Pass subscription services, which may not be set aside unless they are clearly erroneous. This too is already stressed in his speech. The FTC offers not a word in defense of its expert, the one that got completely ridiculed, outdone, outschooled, outplayed, and just sent home packing? Yeah, that one. It does not even argue that the district court's dismantling of his opinions was erroneous, much less clearly erroneous. I said recently, FTC has a problem because its economic expert testimony got destroyed. It didn't get destroyed. It got annihilated. If this was Mortal Kombat, it was like the whole cast performed their fatality back to back, and then it wasn't enough. They pretty much called upon the aliens to come and take whatever was remaining, because there wasn't a place on planet Earth for it without people ridiculing it. The opposition brief reserves the right to dispute that cloud gaming and multi-game library subscription services are relevant antitrust markets at all. Judge Corley didn't say they are. She just didn't make a decision because she threw out the motion on other grounds. And that is correct. The FTC saying that she didn't make the claim that there was an antitrust matter here because she already threw it out, because there was no reason to dwell on this matter anymore, because the FTC failed to provide the evidence needed to even get to that point to prove that it was antitrust. They literally had no leg to stand on. Pretty shocking stuff. It makes no sense to speak of Microsoft foreclosing competitors from content they would have without the merger, because ABK wouldn't make such content available on services in question. Basically saying that, they're not going to put it on PS Plus. Well, Activision Blizzard wouldn't have put it there anyway. The fact that it's on Game Pass is because it's Microsoft's own platform, and it goes with their day and dates policy that people signed up for. If they don't do it, they'll be in breach of that. Whereas Activision Blizzard, to this day, says if this merger doesn't go through, they have no plans on putting games day and date on any subscription service. So Sony wouldn't have had it anyway. So what is the FTC arguing about here? That Microsoft are going to put it on their platform and not on Sony's? If Sony wants it, they can pay for it. They would pay for it to Activision anyway, so what's the difference? As the district court recognized, the FTC's expert did not offer any quantitative analysis to support its theories of harm related to content library and cloud gaming markets, which it did not. It got absolutely ruined. The FTC now perversely responds that the pro-consumer benefit of increasing access to Call of Duty is somehow anti-competitive because only one subscription service, Xbox's Game Pass, will have Call of Duty post-merger. Well, Sony can have it if they want to pay for it. Without the merger, if they wanted it, they would still have to pay for it. It's not going to them for free. They are still basically saying that they want the game on PlayStation Plus for free. What does Sony have on these people? Naked pictures or something? Or, incriminating photos of them doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing? Robbing banks, maybe? I don't know. This is crazy. They're fighting to have Call of Duty on PlayStation Plus for free. But the Game Pass is one more subscription service that the FTC's own expert predicted would have Call of Duty absent the merger. No, it would not. They are completely and utterly stupid. That's already been mentioned and confirmed by Bobby Kotick multiple times. Thus, no reduction of output. There would be a reduction of output. No restriction of consumer choice. There would be a restriction of consumer choice. The FTC here is 100% wrong. The FTC commits the cardinal sin of antitrust, mistaking a competitive disadvantage for a particular competitor, namely the market-dominant Sony, with harm to competition and consumers. They quote Judge Corley about perhaps bad for Sony, but good for gamers. And this is the key point here. Judge Corley isn't interested in what's good for Sony. Judge Corley is interested in what's good for players. Is the game still going to be on PlayStation? Yes. Will they see any difference? Outside of the marketing, perhaps. And maybe they're not going to get those extra freebies that they're used to getting that the other platforms don't normally get. But is the game going to be on parity? Yes. Is it going to be the same on all platforms? Yes. So where's the harm to players? Is the game going to be available to more people to play? Yes. Is it going to be available on GeForce Now? Yes. Is it going to be available on Boosteroid? Yes. So where's the harm? More people will have access to this game. Whether they play it or not is irrelevant. The fact is there will be more choice. So the FTC is either on crack or they're smoking something, because I just don't get it. The opposition brief argues that Judge Corley correctly considered the post-merger world, including those 10-year contracts. To support this, they provide relevant precedent, apparently not from the Ninth Circuit, but there's nothing in the Ninth Circuit contradicting it as far as I know. They then explained that even the FTC's expert testimony just predicted a shift of 5.5% market share from Sony to Microsoft. This is in the event that Microsoft decides to either make exclusive skins or make the game completely exclusive, which would actually make the market more and not less competitive, even if, contrary to all evidence, foreclosure occurred. So the gap between them would actually get closer together, which means that the overall market would actually be more competitive. That is, even if that small share went across, it would make the market more competitive. Footnote 6. Indeed, both Sony and Nintendo have entered into a wide range of exclusivity agreements of their own with various game publishers, and each has far more such arrangements than Xbox. That is correct. Microsoft struggled to get any exclusives because of their market position. And that's because, publishers want to get more exposure. It's like when you do content creation. If you have 1 million subs, but you don't like the game, you hate the game, and then you've got someone who's got 5,000 subs who loves the game and cherishes the game, like in my original channel, when the company goes to actually have their game sponsored so they can get more attention, they're going to go to the one with 1 million subs, pay them the money because they have more eyes looking at it. And because of that, the one that actually does love the game, does cherish the game, they get left out because they don't have the sub count to match it up to get those same eyes. So the one that's got the bigger base will always get the freebies. It's the same principle here. As the district court noted, by pre-existing contract, Call of Duty will remain on PlayStation through the end of 2024. And as we know, Bobby Kotick, which was a bit of a scummy thing to do, went behind Microsoft's back and offered an extension to this pre-existing contract to Jim Ryan to extend it by 3 to 5 years. And Jim Ryan said, no, I don't want an extension. I just want the deal blocked to Bobby Kotick. I mean, for Bobby to actually offer that is pretty scummy, but it is what it is. One key case the FTC relies upon, Hines, is one in which the company announced publicly within hours of the Court of Appeals decision granting a preliminary injunction that it had abandoned its plans to acquire Beech-Nut Foods. Interestingly, they do not point the Ninth Circuit to the 40 countries in which the merger has been cleared, Turkey being the 4th one. And they say nothing about developments in the UK through the FTC pointed to the CMA's decision, which there is clear collusion happening. There is clear, shenanigans going on there. It's now 11 a.m. on the West Coast. That they made that filing at 10:15 a.m. Local time suggested the court did not want to get the alternative view now, but if we count only regular office hours. This was like only a couple of hours after the FTC's motion. I guess the decision will not be made close to midnight. There's a 20-page motion and a 40-page response. Maybe the FTC will now still try to file a reply brief. Anyway, it shouldn't be hard for the Ninth Circuit to throw the FTC's Hail Mary motion out. And that is that is it. The FTC now is looking for a Hail Mary. I don't think it's going to find one, and I think it's pretty much going to be screwed over in ways it really, at the end of the day, despite the grilling that it got yesterday, it's clear that they haven't learned their lesson. That said, though, with the CMA, it looks like the deal will close on Monday, at the very latest, in my opinion. Monday we'll see it closed as they are divesting the cloud-based system. They can work with the CMA to get the cloud sorted, and in my opinion, the CMC that's going to come about on Monday will potentially just have the CMA saying, we're going to pass this through with the notion that the cloud is being divested and maybe taken offline for the time being, and we will investigate that and provide a response in due course and work on it that way. Otherwise, if they actually turn around and say, we want this whole thing blocked until the 29th of August, when the FTC is actually suing Microsoft, well, that really does seem a little sus, doesn't it? Well, that's it for this long video. I did say it's going to be a long one. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Thoughts and comments below. Remain legend.